The quiet mining world of Eleron 3 always lived beneath soft blue skies and slow drifting clouds. A place so peaceful that even pirates ignored it because there was nothing worth stealing except minerals and dust, and the 200 human families who lived there enjoyed a life without fear, without war, without conflict, raising children, growing food, laughing on warm evenings as sunlight bounced off the distant crystal mountains, never once imagining that their world would become the center of a nightmare that would shake the entire galaxy. Everything changed the night their early warning scanners detected movement near the outer edge of the system. At first, the operators thought it was just cargo ships or deep space traders passing through. But when the scanners zoomed in, their smiles vanished. Strange signatures. Cold. Silent. Dark ships. Far more than a simple patrol. The officer on duty, a young woman barely 20, stared at the screen with growing terror as more signatures blinked into existence until the radar was filled with them like a sky drowning in black wings. She activated the emergency broadcast with a trembling hand. Unknown fleet detected. They are not responding. They are surrounding us. Her voice cracked as the lights flickered. The signal was picked up across the colony. Alarms screaming through every home, every school, every sleeping child's room. Parents rushed through streets, clutching their families, pulling them toward shelters, their hearts pounding with fear because Eleron 3 had one rule carved into every wall. If danger comes, trust Earth. Earth protects us. But this time, something was wrong. The attackers did not send warnings, did not communicate, did not identify themselves. They moved silently, like shadows sliding into position around the planet, their hulls pitch black, their weapons glowing faintly with sickly green light. Drones captured the first clear image. Dozens of alien warships, angular like jagged knives, drifting closer with the cold patience of predators about to strike. The miners panicked, grabbing tools, grabbing their children, grabbing each other as thunderous vibrations shook the ground. The planet's weak defense turrets activated but barely charged before the invaders fired. A single volley. One terrifying, unified blast that sliced through the main power grid and shut down half the colony in seconds. Another volley struck the communication towers. Sparks rained across the sky. Static filled the comm lines. The officer in the control tower screamed into the emergency channel, "We are under attack. Repeat, under attack." Her voice trembled, but she kept speaking, kept recording, kept hoping the signal would reach someone before the invaders erased the colony completely. Outside her window, she saw civilians running, parents shielding their children with their own bodies, scientists dragging wounded neighbors toward the bunkers, officers trying to form makeshift defenses with rifles that looked like toys compared to the alien cannons tearing through buildings like paper. The attackers ignored the glowing human symbol carved into the colony's outer wall, a bright blue mark meaning protected under Terran command, a warning older than half the empires in the galaxy, a message every species knew: touch this world and Earth will find you. But the attackers did not care. They laughed. They fired again. The bunkers shook. The skies split apart as structures collapsed. An old worker stood in the streets screaming at the ships above, "We are under Earth's protection. Leave now." But his words vanished under the sound of explosions. The invaders moved through the colony with mechanical precision, scanning buildings and vaporizing anything that moved. Children huddled in corners. Teachers shielded them with their bodies. Families cried in the darkness. A trembling scientist recorded one last message, whispering, "If anyone sees this." They ignored the warning. "Please, someone, help us." Then the feed went black. Everything went black. Except one thing. A single emergency pod shot into the stars carrying the recording of that final moment. Carrying the screams, the explosions, the images of alien ships hovering over burning homes. Carrying the terrified voice of a young human officer whispering her final message as smoke filled the control tower. Tell Earth, they ignored the warning. The pod drifted through the void, battered, damaged, but still alive, its distress beacon pulsing weakly, searching for anyone who would hear. It finally reached Terran space. It finally reached the High Command. When the pod was opened, a silent room of Terran admirals and commanders watched the footage together. Not one word was spoken. Not a breath. Not a cough. Only the sound of children screaming and buildings falling. Then the final whisper. Tell Earth. They ignored the warning. For several seconds. No one moved. No one blinked. These were not ordinary officers. These were the leaders of the most disciplined, patient, peaceful force in the galaxy. Humanity had spent centuries building alliances, avoiding war, choosing diplomacy first, choosing restraint, believing that the galaxy had moved past senseless violence. They believed warnings were enough. They believed their symbol meant safety. They believed their colonies were protected. But now, they saw what ignoring that symbol brought. The head admiral slowly stood. His face was calm, too calm. A calm that felt like the moment before a storm breaks everything in its path. He pressed a single button on the table. Red lights lit the war room. Engines in distant hangars began awakening. Massive sealed doors beneath Earth, Mars, Jupiter's moons, and Titan slid open for the first time in decades. Subterranean chambers that the galaxy had forgotten cracked with blue fire. The admirals stood together as one, their voices cold and unified. Prepare the hunter fleets. Across Earth's military networks, alarms echoed, not emergency alarms, but activation alarms for ships designed for one purpose, to hunt anyone who hurt humans. Massive cruisers awoke under the oceans, rising like metal leviathans from the deep. Stealth destroyers uncloaked around the moon, lights turning blood red. Enormous dreadnoughts hidden inside hollowed asteroids powered up, their engines burning blue like the breath of ancient dragons. The galaxy did not know these ships existed. Humanity hid them because they never wanted to use them. But now, there was no hesitation. No debate. No diplomacy. The Terran war room watched the final frame of the recording. A child crying under a collapsed roof, calling out for a mother who would never answer. That was the moment the calm broke. That was when Earth changed. The Admiral finally spoke 2 words. Quiet, cold, deadly. No mercy. Officers straightened. Engines roared. The hunters launched. Across the galaxy, alien empires felt something shift in the stars. A pressure. A weight. A cold wind across their borders. They felt the ancient side of humanity waking. The side that survived near extinction. The side that fought off predators older than nations. The side that did not forgive. The hunters entered slipspace silently, their hulls glowing with the symbols of the dead from Eleron 3. Their mission was simple. Find the ones responsible. Crush them. Erase their armies. Burn their fleets. Ensure no one else ever ignores Earth's warning again. And as the first hunter fleet crossed into enemy space, not with noise but with a terrifying, quiet fury, one thing became clear to every species watching the stars tremble. Humanity had stopped being peaceful and become something else. Something ancient. Something unstoppable. Something the galaxy had hoped never to see again. They had become hunters across the scattered systems of the outer arm. Whispers spread faster than light as the hunter fleets powered through slipspace with a cold precision the galaxy had never witnessed before. Their engines leaving trails of blue fire that streaked across the void like the marks of ancient predators stirring from a long sleep, and every ship in their path, civilian, pirate, military, felt the space around them vibrate with the terrible message that humanity was no longer asking for peace. Humanity was moving with purpose, with fury, with grief sharpened into an unbreakable blade. Inside the lead dreadnought, Terran Command reviewed the last 5 minutes of Eleron 3's destruction again and again, listening to the screams, the explosions, the trembling voice of the dying officer, and each replay hardened the silence of the room until it felt like stone pressing against their chests. These were not soldiers trained for conquest. These were guardians trained to protect life, to avoid unnecessary destruction, to preserve peace. But when humanity protects and fails, something inside them changes, something ancient and terrifying wakes up, something born from the dark centuries when their ancestors faced extinction again and again, surviving not through mercy, but through relentless determination. Across dozens of human warships, crews moved with a silent fury, hands steady on controls, eyes burning with purpose, each of them seeing the faces of the families from Eleron 3 in their minds, each of them whispering silent promises that the dead would not be forgotten, that justice would fall like a storm without hesitation. And yet, the galaxy made a fatal mistake. They underestimated how fast humanity could strike when anger replaced diplomacy. The alien empire that attacked Eleron 3, called the Draxian Union, sat comfortably in their home systems, laughing, celebrating, mocking the human symbol they had ignored. They believed Earth was too far, too soft, too unwilling to fight, believing humanity would send diplomats, requests, negotiations, maybe even apologies. Instead, their skies cracked open. A ripple tore across the Draxian border system as the first hunter fleet dropped out of slipspace. Not slowly, not with warning, but in a violent wave of light that shook the defensive satellites so violently their circuits fried on impact. Draxian commanders panicked, shouting for shields, shouting for missile batteries, shouting for evacuation plans, but their screams were drowned out when the flagship of the hunter fleet, the dreadnought TNS Vindicator, broadcast a single message across every channel in simple, cold, unbroken human language: "You ignored our warning." And then all communication cut. Draxian outposts tried to scan the hunter ships, but their scanners failed instantly, overloaded by a data storm the humans released. A storm containing the screams, the destruction, the final moments of Eleron 3, forcing every Draxian soldier to watch what they had done, forcing them to hear the children, forcing them to face the consequences they thought they had escaped. One Draxian captain dropped to his knees, hands shaking, whispering, We didn't know they were under Earth." But regret came too late. The hunter fleets moved with inhuman speed, their warships dispersing like a storm of iron and blue fire, each one locking onto a target with silent precision. Draxian fighters launched, thousands of them swarming into the sky like a black cloud, but the hunters didn't even change formation. A wave of human drones burst from the dreadnoughts, small, spinning, alive with crackling blue energy, and when they collided with the fighter swarm, the sky lit up like a field of exploding stars. Within 60 seconds, the entire Draxian fighter wing was gone. Their commanders screamed, ordering missile strikes, but every missile simply turned around mid-flight, redirected by human override codes, and slammed back into their own launch bays. The human ships still hadn't fired a single shot. On the ground, civilians trembled as the sky burned blue. Many were innocent, terrified, begging the gods they believed in to spare them. But the hunters weren't here for them. They were here for soldiers. For commanders. For the ones who pulled the trigger on Eleron 3. The drones scanned every life form. Civilians were ignored. Soldiers were marked. High-ranking commanders were highlighted in glowing red. Their faces were identified instantly. Humanity's warships descended. Silent. Cold. Final. The Draxian Union watched in horror as Earth's fleets didn't attack randomly. They struck like surgeons, like machines built to remove cancer. Military bases collapsed under precision beams that left civilian housing untouched. Command fortresses were cracked open like eggs, their walls melting under controlled plasma bursts. Soldiers were disarmed, disabled, never given a chance to speak or hide. Commanders who ordered the attack on Eleron 3 tried to flee into deep bunkers, but the hunters already had their exact coordinates. The ground shook as stealth torpedoes burrowed beneath the surface, piercing bunkers and knocking out shields with surgical accuracy. The doors collapsed. Humans didn't walk inside. They simply broadcast the footage of Eleron 3 onto every wall, forcing the commanders to face their last victims. Some screamed. Some denied it. Some begged. But the hunters had one mission: erase the threat. The moment the commanders tried to reach for weapons, the torpedoes detonated with clean, controlled force. The Draxian Union lost its entire military command structure in 15 minutes. Not one civilian died. Not one child was harmed. Because humans were not destroying a world, they were hunting the ones who hurt theirs. Across the galaxy, empires watched the live feeds in utter silence. They had always believed humanity was gentle, friendly, respectful. They had always laughed at human warnings. They had always mocked human symbols of protection. But now, watching the hunter fleets burn through the Draxian border like a flood of blue fire, watching the precision of their strikes, watching the cold silence of their ships, they finally understood the truth. Humans did not lack power. Humans controlled their power. And when that control broke, the galaxy would shake. When the last Draxian base fell silent, the TNS Vindicator broadcast a final message across the system. A message so calm and quiet that it chilled every living soul who heard it. Earth does not forget. The silence that followed was heavy, cold, final. Humanity had given their warning. It was ignored across the burning edge of the Draxian border, as the last embers of their destroyed outposts drifted into the cold darkness of space. A new fear began spreading through the enemy ranks. Fear not of death, but of something far worse. The realization that the humans were not slowing down, not negotiating, not resting. They were accelerating, pushing deeper into Draxian space with the relentless determination of a predator that has finally locked onto its prey. On every world, Draxian civilians stared upward at the sky, watching streaks of blue light rip across the heavens as human warships jumped from system to system with impossible speed. Each arrival marked by a shockwave that rattled mountains and cracked the clouds. And even though the hunters did not harm innocents, the sheer silence of their movements made every heart tremble. Inside the high command bunker on Draxian Prime, the remaining generals argued, shouted, panicked, their claws tapping against the metal table in frantic rhythm as they tried to piece together what had happened. They destroyed 37 military outposts in under an hour. One general screamed, his voice shaking. Their drones bypass our shields like they aren't even there. Another cried, slamming his fist into the table. Why didn't they negotiate? Why didn't they ask for peace? A third whispered, trembling. The room fell silent as an elder commander, his scales pale with fear, whispered the words no one wanted to say, because we attacked their children. No one spoke. No one breathed. The truth hung in the air like a blade ready to drop. Meanwhile, deep in space, the hunter fleets continued their deadly advance. Their ships flew in perfect formation, silent and precise, like a living wall of vengeance stretching across the stars. Human soldiers stood inside the ships with cold resolve on their faces. They were not shouting, they were not celebrating, they were mourning. Mourning Aileron 3. Mourning the children who never had the chance to run. Mourning families buried under rubble. That grief sharpened their will into something terrifying. A hunter officer stared at the footage of Aileron 3 on his datapad, the last recording of a child reaching toward the camera with tears in her eyes, whispering for help. He clenched his fist so tightly his hand shook, and his voice cracked as he whispered, "We are coming for you. I promise." In the center of the fleet, the dreadnought TNS Vindicator locked onto the next Draxian target, the Zarmaker defensive ring, a massive series of armored stations surrounding the next populated world. The Draxians believed the ring was unbreakable. It was their pride, their shield, their last defense. But as human scanners completed their analysis, the Vindicator's captain only whispered, "Weak points confirmed. Proceed." The hunters moved. Draxian soldiers stationed on the ring felt the space around them vibrate. Their screens flickered. Their weapons glitched. Then, silence. A bright flash erupted as dozens of hunter ships emerged from slipspace at once, forming a circle around the ring like a halo of blue flame. The Draxian commanders screamed orders, "Fire everything." But before the words finished, human drones swarmed across the ring, slicing through circuits, disabling turrets, shutting off energy cores. Not one explosion. Not one wasted shot. Only perfect, surgical precision. The defensive ring went dark. One Draxian officer stared at his dead console, whispering, How do you fight an enemy that turns off your weapons just by arriving?" But the worst moment came when the Vindicator sent a hologram directly into the command center. A projection of the young officer from Aileron 3, the girl who sent the final message, appeared, her broken voice replaying through the room. "Tell Earth." They ignored the warning. The Draxian soldiers froze. Some collapsed. Some screamed. Some covered their ears, unable to endure the weight of guilt. And then the image faded. A human voice replaced it. Calm, deep, cold. "We warned you. You chose to kill our families. Now we choose to end yours." The Draxian soldiers broke. They threw down their weapons. Many begged for mercy. But the hunters were not here for soldiers who surrendered. They were here for leaders. For the ones who approved the attack. For the ones who laughed at Earth's symbol. For the ones who ordered the destruction of Aileron 3. The Vindicator fired. A single beam. One shot. The entire defensive ring split open like an egg cracking, drifting apart into glittering fragments. Not one civilian died. Not one home on the planet below was touched. The hunters left the civilians alive because humans were not monsters. They were delivering justice. But the military command? Gone. In the Galactic Council on Helion Prime, every alien race watched the unfolding nightmare on live broadcasts. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. No one dared speak. The room was suffocating with dread. The council elder whispered, "The humans, they are unstoppable," a nervous ambassador added. This is genocide." The human ambassador stood up slowly, his expression dark, his jaw tight, and answered with a voice filled with pain and fury. "Genocide is what happened to Eleron 3. What we are doing now is justice." The council fell silent. Because deep down, even they understood. Meanwhile, the Draxian homeworld trembled as sensors detected a growing wave of blue light. Civilians ran into the streets. Families held each other. Churches filled with prayers. And high above the planet, the hunter fleets appeared. Tens of thousands of human ships, engines blazing like suns, forming a wall of pure vengeance that stretched across the sky. The Draxian president screamed into his communicator, "Open negotiations. We surrender. We surrender." But humanity was not listening. Not anymore. Not after Eleron 3. Not after seeing dead children in rubble. Not after hearing the last message of a dying officer. The Vindicator broadcast the final message to the entire Draxian world in a voice that sounded almost like a ghost speaking from the grave. Across the trembling skies of Draxian Prime, as the hunter fleets formed a massive wall of blue fire above the terrified world, the air itself felt heavy, thick with the kind of fear that sinks into the bones and refuses to leave, and civilians staring upward felt their hearts stop as the human ships slowly descended. Silent, precise, burning with the cold. Determination of a civilization that had known pain too deeply to ever forgive an attack on its own children. In the shadows of shattered mountains, families huddled together, crying, whispering prayers to gods who had never answered before, asking for mercy from enemies they once mocked. And even the bravest soldiers found their weapons shaking in their hands as they realized the truth they had tried so hard to ignore. The humans were not here to negotiate, not here to talk, not here to threaten. They were here to finish what the Draxians started. And nothing in the galaxy could stop them now. The Draxian president, sweating, trembling, barely able to stand, screamed into the planetary broadcast system, "We surrender. We surrender. Please, humans, please stop." But even his own people looked at him with hollow eyes because they all knew surrender came too late. Surrender only works on a species that still believes mercy is deserved, and humanity had passed that point the moment the hunter fleets watched the destruction of Eleron 3. Above the planet, inside the TNS Vindicator, the Terran admiral stared at the image of the Draxian world, his face rigid, unblinking, carved with grief and rage, and in his hand, he held the small recording device recovered from the ruins of the mining colony. The last message from the young officer, her whisper echoing in his ear even now, "Tell Earth." They ignored the warning. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, every trace of mercy had vanished. "Begin the hunt." The words were soft, almost gentle, but the universe felt them like a thunder strike. Instantly, the hunters moved. Human warships broke formation like a swarm of steel and fire, splitting into dozens of coordinated strike wings, each wing locking onto a marked target. Military commanders, fleet leaders, generals, admirals, strategists, the architects of the Eleron 3 massacre. Precision beams shot downward like spears of blue lightning, striking deep beneath the planet's crust and ripping open underground bunkers with perfect accuracy. Entire military complexes went dark. Armored fortresses collapsed as drones infiltrated ventilation shafts and disabled reactors from the inside with surgical precision. Draxian soldiers fired desperately, screaming war cries, launching missiles into the sky, but every weapon was intercepted before it traveled even 20 meters. Every missile dismantled by microdrones. Every plasma shot redirected back into the ground. The planet's surface shook as hunter ground units deployed. Tall, armored giants wrapped in glowing blue exosuits that made them look like ancient titans awakening from the earth. They landed with earth-shattering force, sending shockwaves across the battlefield as their boots crushed metal and stone beneath them. The Draxian troops tried to retreat, tried to scatter, but the hunters moved too fast, Too quietly, too purposefully. They didn't slaughter. They didn't rampage. They targeted only marked soldiers, those who held rank during the attack on Eleron 3. Everyone else was ignored. Civilians hiding in their homes watched in disbelief as Hunter soldiers passed them without a glance, their massive armored bodies moving like ghosts through the smoke-filled streets, scanning every building for hostile signatures. One young Draxian child peeked through a shattered window, watching a towering human soldier walk past carrying a wounded civilian to safety. The child had been taught to fear the humans, taught that they were monsters, taught they were savage warmongers. But the soldier set the injured civilian gently on the ground, scanned him for injuries, and continued walking toward the sound of distant gunfire. The child whispered, why are they helping us?" And his mother, clutching him close, trembled as she answered, "Because they are not here to destroy us, only the ones who destroyed theirs." Meanwhile, deep inside the last Draxian command bunker, the remaining generals stared in horror as their screens flickered with the glowing outline of a human figure. Someone had hacked into their visual network. The image sharpened. It was the same little girl from Eleron 3. Her final message played, her broken, terrified voice filling the bunker with the sound of a world dying. The generals collapsed. Some cried. Some begged the universe for forgiveness. But forgiveness never came. The Vindicator locked onto their bunker and fired a precision kinetic rod. No explosion, no fire, just a clean impact that crushed the bunker into dust, ending the last thread of the Draxian military. Across the planet, every commander responsible for Eleron 3 was eliminated in under 20 minutes. The Draxian Union collapsed. Their flag fell from every military tower. Their entire chain of command was erased. But humanity still did not touch civilians. Did not touch children, did not touch hospitals, did not touch cities. Instead, the Terran Admiral broadcast a message across the entire Draxian world. A message that froze the hearts of every species listening across the galaxy. The screen flickered. His face appeared. Calm, grieving, unbreakable. "You attacked our families," he said softly. "We warned you. You ignored us. You thought we would forgive." His jaw tightened. His eyes burned. "This is the price." The broadcast ended. And then, silence. A silence so deep that even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Across the galaxy, empires understood the message clearly. Humans were not conquerors, but they were the most dangerous defenders any species had ever seen. When the hunters finally lifted from Draxian Prime, leaving behind only quiet streets, destroyed military bunkers, and the heavy memory of what they had done, the planet trembled with the weight of a new truth, one the galaxy would repeat for generations. When humans say, "Do not touch our worlds," you listen. Across the ruined command sectors of the Draxian Union, a heavy, suffocating silence settled like ash after a volcanic eruption, thick and unescapable, and every surviving soldier, every shaken civilian, every trembling leader understood one terrifying truth. The hunters were not done, because what happened on Draxian Prime was not the end. It was only the beginning of what humanity had sworn to deliver. In orbit, the hunter fleets reformed with terrifying discipline, their ships aligning into a massive spear-shaped formation, engines humming like the heartbeat of an ancient beast rising from sleep, blue lines glowing across their hulls like veins filled with burning fire. The Terran Admiral stood on the command deck of the TNS Vindicator, staring at the holomap displaying the remaining Draxian military assets. There were still fleets left. Still outposts. Still secret fortresses where the architects of Eleron 3's destruction were hiding, believing distance would protect them. They believed wrong. The Admiral lifted the recording device again, the one recovered from the ruins of Eleron 3. The image of the young officer flickered, her desperate eyes, her broken voice whispering through smoke and fire, "Tell Earth." They ignored the warning. That whisper had become humanity's anchor. That whisper had become the fire inside every hunter. The Admiral lowered the device slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was cold enough to freeze the marrow of stars. "Set target, all remaining Draxian military worlds." His officers turned. "All of them, sir. All of them." No debate. No hesitation. No mercy. The hunters moved. Slipspace ruptured like blue lightning as the fleets vanished, reappearing instantly above the next Draxian stronghold, Valarax, the hidden fortress world considered the seat of Draxian military power. Their greatest generals. Their elite soldiers. Their last hope. The Draxian commanders screamed in panic when hunter warships materialized above the planet in a storm of blue fire. Thousands of human ships. Tens of thousands. Enough to blanket half the sky. The defensive satellites opened fire immediately, but their beams bent harmlessly around human shields. Plasma cannons charged up, but before they could fire, hunter drones swarmed across them like a cloud of metal locusts, disabling every coil, every circuit, leaving them dark. The Draxian flagship, Bloodthorn, launched from the fortress surface, engines roaring, guns blazing in every direction, commanders shouting war cries, but as soon as they entered orbit, they saw the Vindicator turn toward them with slow, terrifying calm. No warning. No threats. The Vindicator fired a single calibrated kinetic rod, and the Bloodthorn shattered like glass, breaking into glowing fragments that scattered across the sky. The destruction was so fast that many soldiers didn't even realize their ship had been split apart. The hunters moved again. On the ground, Valarax soldiers formed defensive lines, shouting orders and pressing guns to their shoulders with hands that shook uncontrollably. The air trembled as massive hunter dropships broke through the atmosphere like falling stars, landing with such force that shockwaves tore across the battlefield. Human strike teams marched forward, armored titans with glowing blue visors, weapons humming with silent fury, and the Draxian defenders fired desperately. Plasma bolts shot across the air, only to be absorbed by shimmering human shields. Rocket barrages rained down, only to be intercepted by drones that detonated them mid-air like sparks. The humans advanced without slowing, their footsteps heavy, rhythmic, relentless, each step echoing like the heartbeat of a god coming to pass judgment. A Draxian commander attempted to rally his troops, screaming, "They are only humans. They bleed, fight." But when he looked into the eyes of the nearest hunter soldier, he froze. There was something in that gaze. Not anger. Not hatred. Something colder. Something older. The commander whispered, horrified, "They are not fighting for glory. They are fighting for the dead." Before he could blink, a human drone disarmed him, dragging him to his knees. The hunter soldier scanned him. No mark. No involvement in Aileron 3. He was ignored. The soldier simply walked past him, leaving him trembling on the ground. This confused many Draxian civilians watching from hiding spots. Why aren't they killing us? Why do they ignore us? Are they monsters or protectors? They didn't understand until they saw the hunters storm the military citadel, smashing through reinforced steel doors like they were made of paper, searching room by room, scanning faces, seeking only one type of person. Those whose signatures matched the attack logs of Aileron 3. When they found them, the earth shook. No screams. No mercy. No hesitation. Only justice. The highest-ranking general of the Draxian Union, a tall, armored figure responsible for authorizing the slaughter of Aileron 3, attempted to escape using a hidden teleport beacon. But human jammers shut it down instantly. He fell to the ground, screaming. The Vindicator broadcast his location to every hunter unit. Within seconds, a squad of armored humans appeared around him. He tried to speak, to defend himself, to lie, to bargain. But the hunters only played back the recording from Aileron 3. The little girl's trembling whisper. His face drained of color. His legs gave out beneath him. "No," he whispered, voice cracking. "No, please." But Earth had heard enough pleas that night. The hunters delivered judgment. The fortress collapsed. Valarax fell. And once again, not one civilian died. Across the galaxy, alien races watched the feed with breathless terror. They had never seen a species fight like this, calculated, merciless toward the guilty, untouched compassion for the innocent, strength controlled but unstoppable when unleashed. Whole councils trembled. "Do not provoke humans," some whispered. "Do not touch their worlds," others warned. "They fight with their hearts," one old alien murmured, "and nothing in the galaxy survives the rage of a heart broken." When the last military world was purified of those responsible, the hunters regrouped for their final task. There remained one last Draxian stronghold, the heart of their empire, where the supreme warlord, the one who laughed at Earth's symbol, was hiding behind layers of shields, armies, and bunkers. He believed he was safe. He believed humans would stop. He believed surrender would protect him. He believed wrong. The hunters turned toward his world. The Vindicator's engines glowed with a deadly blue fire. The Admiral raised the recording device once more, the last echo of the Aileron 3 officer filling the silent bridge. Tell Earth. They ignored the warning. His eyes hardened. His voice turned to stone. Send the final fleet. The hunters ignited their engines. The stars shook. The galaxy trembled, because the humans were coming, and this time, they were coming for the one who started it all. Across the collapsing remains of the Draxian Empire, a new kind of fear began to rise. Fear not of battle, not of death, but of the approaching silence that spread like a cold shadow across every world as the hunter fleets prepared for their final strike. Because now only one target remained. The last surviving Draxian stronghold, a massive fortress world hidden deep inside a nebula. Of violet storms, a place the Draxian warlord believed was impenetrable, protected by 20 layered shields, 12 orbital cannons, hundreds of anti-ship batteries, and the entire elite command force sworn to protect him. He believed he was safe, untouchable, beyond vengeance. But deep inside the stormy nebula, the space began to tremble, stars flickering as something massive approached with the silent pressure of a tidal wave, and Draxian scouts watching the sensors felt their claws turn cold as the data spiked. Hundreds of thousands of human signatures entering the nebula at once, burning through the storm clouds with blue fire, tearing the darkness apart with engines that growled like ancient beasts waking from a long sleep. The warlords stared at the holoscreen in disbelief, whispering, "Impossible. They should be exhausted. They cannot keep fighting at this speed." But even his own soldiers stepped back as the human fleet emerged from the swirling storms, forming a colossal arrow-shaped formation that pointed directly at the heart of the Draxian fortress. The TNS Vindicator led the front, its hull scarred from battles, its lights dimmed from strain, yet still burning with the unbreakable resolve of a civilization refusing to leave their dead unavenged. Inside the bridge, human officers stood silent, their eyes fixed on the image of the Draxian fortress spinning slowly on the holotable, its shields glowing with layered energy barriers. The Admiral approached the table with slow steps, his boots echoing through the silent bridge as he held the recording device from Aileron 3 in his hand like a sacred memory carved into his soul. The image of the dying officer flickered across the screen again, her voice trembling, "Tell Earth." They ignored the warning. And the moment her voice cracked with fear, the entire bridge crew clenched their jaws, fists tightening, hearts burning with a righteous fire that no weapon in the galaxy could extinguish. The Admiral raised his head. "Begin Phase 1. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a star collapsing. Outside, the hunter fleet scattered into lightning-fast strike formations. Long-range cannons from the Draxian fortress opened fire, huge beams of red and purple energy ripping through the nebula like claws. But the hunters moved too quickly, blurring through the storm as if dancing between the beams, their shields shimmering with blue sparks. Human destroyers launched waves of microdrones that dispersed across the battlefield like a shimmering silver mist. The fortress scanners tried to lock onto the drones, failed. Tried again, failed. Tried to jam them, failed. And then the drones ignited. Thousands of electromagnetic pulses detonated simultaneously, crashing through the layered shields with the unstoppable fury of a collapsing star. The first shield flickered, then broke. A planetary shockwave rattled the fortress, sending Draxian soldiers stumbling, alarms screaming across every hall, lights flickering as the power grid strained to keep the remaining shields active. "How many shields did that just break?" the warlord screamed. His officers stared in horror. 100% of the first layer, sire, and half of the second layer. "From drones?" he roared, slamming his fist into the console. But the nightmare wasn't over. The Vindicator descended, its engines glowing white-hot as if it were carrying the fury of 1,000 storms, and as it approached, its massive cannons folded outward like wings opening. The Admiral spoke again. Phase 2. Human ships unleashed precision beams that stabbed through the storm like blue lightning spears, striking the second shield layer in synchronized impact waves. The shield shattered. Across the fortress, Soldiers screamed as walls vibrated and support beams bent like soft metal. The third shield struggled, flickered, dimmed. The warlord, now shaking, tried to escape into a fortified escape chamber. But the doors didn't close fast enough as the power grid collapsed. "Activate planetary weapons," he shouted. The fortress aimed its superweapon, the Eta cannon, at the Vindicator. A massive beam of violet fire energy shot forward, powerful enough to split a moon in half. The beam struck the Vindicator dead on. The nebula erupted in light. For a moment, Draxian soldiers cheered. Then the light faded. The Vindicator was still there, still advancing. Its shield shimmered like a stone in stormwater, the beam sliding harmlessly off its armor. The Draxian warlord fell to his knees. This cannot be, but humanity had not even begun. Phase 3, the Admiral whispered. Human dreadnoughts opened their wings, revealing thousands of kinetic pods. They launched. Metal streaks tore through the air like rain from a broken sky. Each pod hit the third shield at precise, calculated angles, like chisels breaking stone. The third shield cracked once, twice, shattered. The fortress shook violently. Explosions tore through lower levels. Command officers screamed. Soldiers fled. The warlord ran deeper into the bunker, voice trembling as he tried to command, "Retreat. Surrender. Anything to make them stop." But for the hunters, surrender meant nothing now. This was not negotiation. This was judgment. The Vindicator descended lower, towering above the fortress like a mountain of steel and fire. Phase 4, the Admiral said. The Vindicator fired a single blue-hot lance of plasma directly into the fortress surface. The ground liquefied. The bunker doors exploded outward. Draxian elites ran in every direction. But the hunters had no interest in capturing them. Human ground units deployed with thunderous steps, their armored boots crushing debris, scanning signatures until they found the one they were looking for. The warlord. The one who signed the attack order. The one who said humans were weak. The one who laughed at the Terran symbol. He ran through the last corridor, screaming, "Stop! Please stop!" But the corridor lit up with blue light as a hunter soldier stepped into his path. 7 feet tall, armor glowing, eyes cold behind the visor. The warlord collapsed to the floor, shaking uncontrollably, tears falling. "Please, I surrender. Please." "I didn't know," but the soldier did not speak. He simply stepped aside. And from behind him, a hologram flickered to life. The little officer from Eleron 3. Her voice trembling. "Tell Earth." They ignored the warning. The warlord began sobbing, crawling backward, shaking his head violently. "No, please, please." But there was no plea in the universe strong enough to erase what he had done. The Vindicator fired a final precision beam. The bunker collapsed. The warlord vanished beneath fire and dust. The nebula grew silent. Draxian's last command structure fell. Humanity had completed its hunt. Across the galaxy, every species felt the dread settle into their bones as the Vindicator broadcast across every channel. The Admiral appeared, silent, cold. His words were simple. Final. Earth warned you. He paused as the screen flickered with the symbol of Eleron 3. Never ignore us again. The broadcast ended, and the galaxy understood the message carved into the stars that day. Humans do not hunt often. But when they do, they wipe out the ones who made them angry. Across the remains of the Draxian Nebula Fortress, after the final bunker collapsed and the last warlord vanished under human fire, a deep, haunting silence spread across the stars. A silence so absolute that even the nebula storms seemed to hold their breath as if the universe itself was trying to understand what it had just witnessed. Because the sight of a human fleet wiping out an entire military empire with surgical precision had shaken every species watching. And now that the destruction was complete, fear began to evolve into something more dangerous, realization. On world after world, across hidden star systems and distant trading moons, alien citizens gathered around screens, unable to look away from the broadcasts replaying the fall of Draxian Prime, the shattered fortresses, the broken warlord, the towering human soldiers marching through fire and smoke, their armor glowing like the wrath of ancient kings, and the image that terrified them most was not the destruction itself, but the cold, focused silence of humanity as they carried out each step of the hunt without hesitation, without cruelty, without joy, just duty, justice, and grief sharpened into an unstoppable blade. On Helion Prime, inside the Galactic Council chamber, leaders of 43 species sat frozen, their faces pale, hands trembling, unable to speak as the holoscreen displayed the aftermath of the final strike. No one blinked. No one breathed. The council elder finally whispered, voice cracked with fear. They destroyed an entire empire, but saved every civilian. His words trembled in the air. An ambassador from the Avalon clans murmured, "This is not war. This is something else entirely." A reptilian delegate shook his head violently. "This is extermination." But the human ambassador stood slowly, his face dark with a pain no one else could understand, and his voice, though soft, echoed louder than any explosion. "No. This is justice. Pure. Precise. Controlled. We killed only the ones who killed ours." He looked around the room with eyes full of fire. If humanity wanted to exterminate them, there would be nothing left of the Draxian worlds. The council fell silent, because deep inside, they knew he was right. Meanwhile, on Draxian Prime, civilians emerged slowly from bunkers, mothers clutching children tightly, workers trembling as they stepped into the quiet streets, expecting to see ruins everywhere, expecting their homes to be ashes. But instead, they saw something strange. Human drones had disabled military buildings, but left homes untouched. Hunter soldiers had shattered bunkers, but carried wounded civilians to safety. Not a single child was harmed. And now human medships hovered above the city, scanning for injured civilians, dropping supply pods of food and water, treating wounds, repairing hospitals, moving like healers after fighting like warriors. A Draxian mother, tears streaming down her face, whispered, "They protected us, after destroying our armies." And her daughter, looking up at the glowing human ships, whispered back, "Why?" The mother answered with a shaking breath, "Because they only kill the guilty." On the ground, human soldiers stood silent in the ruins of the last bunker, their armor scorched, their faces hidden behind glowing visors, waiting for extraction. One soldier, a tall figure with soot covering his chest plate, looked down at a cracked holopad where the last image of Eleron 3 flickered, a child holding a stuffed toy, crying for her mother. The soldier's jaw tightened as he whispered, "You are safe now, we avenged you." And the light reflecting on his visor made it look like he was crying even though no one could see his eyes. Above the planet, the TNS Vindicator anchored itself in orbit, its engines quiet but glowing faint blue like the heart of a beast finally calming after a long hunt. Inside, the Admiral stood alone on the bridge, the recording device from Eleron 3 resting in his hands, its metal still stained with dust from the collapsed colony. He pressed play again, hearing the trembling voice for what felt like the 1,000th time. "Tell Earth." They ignored the warning, his shoulders lowered as the weight of the dead pressed against him. But then another voice broke the silence, one of his officers. "Sir, incoming transmissions from over 50 species." The Admiral didn't turn. "What do they want?" They want to apologize." The Admiral slowly closed his eyes. Every species, every empire, every council that ever mocked human warnings was now terrified. Terrified enough to kneel. Terrified enough to bow their heads and whisper, "We are sorry. Please don't turn your hunters on us." Across the galaxy, alien politicians scrambled to rewrite treaties, rewrite propaganda, rewrite their histories to hide the insults they once threw at Earth. On news channels, anchors trembled as they reported, "Humanity has shown a level of precision and power far beyond anything we predicted." In underground taverns, criminals whispered, "Don't anger the Terrans, they don't give second warnings." And children in distant systems repeated new bedtime truths. "Never touch a human world, or the hunters will come." But something else was happening too, something the galaxy did not expect. Humanity did not stay to conquer, did not plant flags, did not demand tribute. They simply lifted their fleets, rescued surviving civilians, and prepared to leave. The Draxian survivors stared up, confused. "They are leaving." "But they defeated us, why not occupy the planet?" The answer became clear when a young human medic knelt beside an injured Draxian child, gently placing a healing band across her leg. "We do not conquer worlds," he whispered with a soft smile. "We protect them." The child stared at him, confused. "Even ours?" "Even yours," he answered. "As long as you harm no more of ours." Meanwhile, the final hunter units boarded their ships. Engines burned. Fleets aligned. The Admiral held the recording device one last time, whispering, "Rest, little one, justice is complete." And as the Vindicator turned away from the ruins of the Draxian Empire, the stars outside seemed to shimmer with the final truth that every species in the galaxy now understood with painful clarity. Humans did not hunt for revenge. Humans hunted to defend. And nothing in the galaxy survived when humans defended their dead. The hunters left the nebula in silence. But the fear they carved into history would echo for centuries. Across the quiet lanes of space where the Draxian Empire once stretched proudly across star after star, only silence remained. A silence so deep that even the light from distant suns seemed afraid to touch the ruins left behind by humanity's unstoppable hunters. And as the final echoes of war faded into the cold vacuum, every species across the galaxy held their breath, waiting to see what Earth would do next, wondering if the humans, now awake, now furious, now revealed in their true, terrifying strength, would continue their march or vanish back into the shadows they emerged from. The TNS Vindicator led the retreating fleet, its massive hull reflecting the dim glow of dying nebula storms like a wounded beast returning home after avenging the death of its young. And inside, the Terran Admiral stood alone on the command deck, the recording device from Eleron 3 nestled in his hands one last time, its edges worn from the countless times he had played the message. Her voice echoed softly, "Tell Earth." They ignored the warning. And the Admiral exhaled slowly, his eyes burning with grief, with exhaustion, with a pain that victory could never erase. He whispered, "You are avenged, child. The ones who hurt you are gone." But vengeance did not feel like triumph. It felt like mourning. Around him, officers moved quietly, their steps slow, as if the weight of what they had seen, what they had done, had sunk deep into their bones. The hunters had won. Yes. They had wiped out the killers. They had shown the galaxy the price of touching human lives. But even victory could not silence the memory of the terrified voices that came from Eleron 3. The fleets drifted through the nebula as if moving through a graveyard, every wisp of color a reminder of the lives that were lost. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, a wave of fear turned into a wave of questions. Will the humans strike again? What if they turn on us next? How do we stop them? But those who understood humans whispered the real answer: do not provoke them. In distant council rooms, alien leaders argued, trembled, and finally bowed their heads as they rewrote laws forbidding attacks on human colonies forever. They changed border policies, recalled warships, ordered propaganda to praise Earth instead of mocking it. But the galaxy's fear was mixed with something else: respect. The kind of respect given to forces of nature. Because the hunters showed something no empire had ever shown before: the ability to destroy an enemy completely without touching a single innocent. On Helion Prime, the Galactic Council held an emergency summit. Representatives from dozens of species gathered, whispering anxiously until the human ambassador entered the chamber. The room fell silent. No one dared speak. No one dared raise their voice. The human ambassador approached the center podium, his face tired but steady, his eyes still carrying the grief of Eleron 3. He looked at the silent room and said softly, "Earth will not ask for tribute. Not for fear. Not for territory. We are returning home." A ripple of shock passed across the chamber. Some gasped. Some looked relieved. Others looked confused. "But you destroyed an empire," a trembling alien delegate said. "Why walk away?" The ambassador's eyes darkened. "Because we are not conquerors," he said. "We protect. And when protection fails, we hunt. But we do not stay." His words spread through the chamber like a cold wind. Another delegate whispered, "What about the survivors?" "We have sent medical aid," the ambassador replied. "Human engineers will repair homes, hospitals, power systems. We destroyed their armies, not their future. The council elder stood slowly. Humanity, he whispered, your strength, it frightens us. The ambassador nodded. Good. His voice was soft, but it struck like thunder. Let it frighten you, because fear stops fools from repeating the same mistake. The chamber fell silent again. And in that silence, they understood something fundamental about humans. Humans do not seek war, but they do not bow to evil. They do not conquer planets, but they do not forgive attacks. They do not burn civilizations, but they do not spare the guilty. Later, as the hunter fleets crossed the final border back into Terran space, humans everywhere watched the live broadcast. Millions gathered around screens, candles lit in windows, silence filling homes as they honored the memory of Eleron 3. When the Vindicator reached Earth's orbit, its massive shadow passed over the blue oceans and green continents like a guardian returning after slaying a monster. A worldwide transmission went out. The Admiral appeared, no armor, no medals, just a man who had carried the weight of war on his shoulders. Today, he said, we brought justice for Eleron 3. But it is not a day of celebration. It is a day of remembrance. Images of the fallen colony played, families smiling before the attack, children playing in the dust, scientists laughing during experiments, miners waving at cameras. The Admiral lowered his head. We will rebuild. We will protect. And we will never let this happen again. Across Earth, families cried. Soldiers saluted. And children raised candles toward the sky. Then the Admiral spoke the final line, one that would be etched into the heart of every species across the galaxy. If you harm one human child, he said softly, you declare war on all of us. In distant corners of the galaxy, where enemies once joked about humans being soft and peaceful, those same voices now whispered in terror about the day Earth unleashed its hunters, whispering warnings to their children, warnings written in shaking voices. Do not touch human worlds. Do not ignore human symbols. Do not provoke the species that fights like a grieving parent. And so the hunters returned home, engines dimming, fleets scattering into peaceful orbits, their armor scarred but their mission complete, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. A galaxy that finally, painfully understood the truth humanity had tried to teach for centuries. Humans do not hunt often. But when they do, the guilty do not survive.